All right, welcome back to another live episode of Fintech Fridays, and we are on a Friday, which is awesome. We're at the tail end of a Friday here in Detroit. I am really excited for this conversation today. We are doing the quad box, as Michael Kelleher defined this. So this is a little bit of the red zone here on a Friday. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on this fine Friday.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm going to do some quick intros, and then I'm going to let each of you just kind of share a little bit of your background and a little bit about your company, and then we'll get into the topic. And just to kind of kick it off, what we're going to be talking about is, I think, extremely timely given given what's going on in the real estate finance space today. We're going to focus today on strategies to grow, engage, and nurture your database. And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And I'm excited to kind of get into the weeds on this with three experts in this area. So to get things started, I'd like to ask you, Michael Kelleher, to just talk a little bit about your background and adopt the brand. This was your brainchild to bring this group together.
Yeah, so my background is I created the idea of a mobile app in mortgage, and over the years, I was out there on the front lines, almost became a futurist because of how much kickback was there in the beginning on nobody will download an app. Now Alec Hansen, makes people check their screen times, and they're over like 7 hours of staring at that tablet. So not only was I out there in the scene constantly, I always say I went over to over 100 conferences. We also mobilized $500 billion of mortgage volume. We had over 200 of the top 500 HMDA lenders, especially the IMBs, rolled us out enterprise wide. So we went deep with loan officers, but we also were big in the integration game. We had 32,000 loan officers on our platform. And I am in a spot now where I have always been known to go deeper on the technology side and have a closer eye on the behaviors of what people are doing today in the weeds and what I see consumers outside do. So I started Adopt the Brand really to help lenders see through. They only see decks, booths, aggressive salespeople, some of my best friends, right? But I think sometimes they miss that strategy that is needed to take best in class of what they already have and add what I see as some of the best in class that I don't know why, but they're not executing, and then be able to execute it down at the loan officer level because their C-level person maybe isn't always scalable to 200 loan officers. And I couldn't find a better example of that than what Jeff and Michael are doing. So I was excited that if anything, my Rolodex can see that this is truly what Adopt the Brand means. When you hear these two talk, and if you're somebody not using them, or you're a lender and your loan officers aren't using them, this is what Adopt the Brand is all about. Listen to these two, because if they're not part of your 2024 strategy, and then adding on, FinLocker and ways to connect with that consumer, it's going to be a really tough 2024 of just saying the 8s are great.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Michael. And again, it was your brainchild to kind of bring this together. I'm super appreciative of that. Mr. McAllister, why don't you tell us a little bit about Empower LO and your background?
Yeah, I wasn't quite ready for that level of introduction, so I don't know if
That's all right.
If my background's going to be as exciting as that introduction was. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so Empower LO started when I, as a loan officer, working for originally a large bank, and then after reading a book by our friend, I think you saw the post today, Brian, and Andrew Pollack, the Mortgage Marketing Manifesto. After reading that book, I quit my bank job and started generating leads, started working at a retail office that kind of like had a little bit more hands-off approach than obviously a large bank is going to have with compliance. And so I was able to dabble and kind of learn how to generate leads. Specifically, at the time I was in my, I don't know, at the time I was like 23, and average realtor in my market was 50. And so I had a really hard time relating and building relationships with real estate agents. Plus, if any of you guys are familiar with DISC assessments, DISC profiles, I'm a very high D personality. which means I don't give people the warm and fuzzies. I like to get down to business. I like to make shit happen. And so surprisingly, that didn't work to my advantage, or at least I didn't know how to make it work to my advantage. And so I had to figure out how to generate leads. And so I did. I looked at what companies like Quicken Loans at the time, obviously Rocket Mortgage now. This was 2016, 2017, beginning of 2017. 2016, I believe, was the first year that Quicken Loans overtook Wells Fargo as the #1 volume originating company, originator in the country, basically #1 volume overall lender in the country. And so it was very top of mind that's who I should be modeling. And so that was, like I said, back then. We manage close to 150 grand a month in Google ad spend for individual loan officers and branch managers across the country. We don't generate leads for call centers. We work with individual loan officers in local markets to help them, them build a consumer direct side of their business. In the process of doing that, we started working with a software platform called HighLevel about 4 or 5 years ago. And HighLevel over the past year to 2 years has really shown themselves to be our #1 software technology partner, and an insanely powerful opportunity for small business owners across the country and mortgage loan officers, individual originators. And so we've really kind of transitioned our business from being so heavily dependent on these lead generation efforts to where we still run the lead generation efforts, but all of that has to be driven by a solid, what we're going to talk about today, database management strategy, which HighLevel makes it very, very easy and lucrative to do. And so that's kind of how Jeff and I partnered up. And I think with that, I'll kick it over to Jeff and or back to you to introduce Jeff. I don't know how this works, but I know Jeff.
It works however we want it to work, right? So yeah, Jeff, let's get your background, because I think you kind of round this thing out really nicely in terms of kind of the ecosystem to really drive hyper local execution in the in that not just lead gen space, but in kind of the business development space. So tell us a little bit about yourself and Mortgage Marketing Institute.
Sure, appreciate that. So I entered the mortgage industry in 2003. I had just come off the road after spending a number of years as a field sales representative for Tony Robbins. And what that meant was I would live in a city for 2 months at a time and travel around the city and give presentations to sales offices. And two of the most common offices I would go into would be real estate and mortgage. And so the long and short of it was, when I decided to stop traveling, settle down, have a family, there were two careers that were primarily in front of me as of interest to me. One was real estate, one was mortgage. I just, for whatever reason, connected to those two. And I ultimately decided to choose to become a mortgage professional, which I did in 2003. And then, through various, iterations of career and development and evolution over time, as we all experience, ultimately it was about 5 years ago that I landed as a national sales coach and trainer at Movement Mortgage. Spent about 4.5 years there working within that organization. And then recently, over the last couple of years, transitioned out of that to be, more of a free agent, if you will. And bottom line, I think what I do, also during that time, I did start a podcast. It's called Mortgage Marketing Radio. We just finished our 300th episode. So yeah, thank you. It's been a labor of love, and this really is a passion project for me. I think for a lot of people, once you get in this industry, it's like hard to get out, especially if it's like, part of your DNA. And there's a lot of things to love about the industry, even with its challenges, which we'll talk about today. But fast forward to today. So primarily, my main focus is helping loan originators reach real estate agents at scale to attract, engage, and convert them to referral partners without chasing, begging, or co-paying for leads. And we run that platform, per Michael's point, on HighLevel. And there's a variety of different ways we do that. We lead with education in the local market by helping LOs teach agent classes to build those audiences, and then integrate all the other aspects of that, right? The digital online presence, marketing automation, all that stuff. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. There's a ton to unpack with the great backgrounds of you three. So from a theme perspective, we're sitting here today on whatever it is, Friday, the 21st of October. we all woke up to the 30-year hitting 8% for the first time in 20 plus years, right? Michael Kelleher and I just came off of the Mortgage Bankers annual conference, and the forecast, if you will, from the MBA's chief economist and his staff, as you might imagine, is not super rosy in the near term. And so a lot of conversations that I've been having, with prospects and even some current clients and some other partners, is all around this concept of reach, assist, engage, and nurture, and having a patient view on these, air quote leads, right? These prospective clients, these prospective referral partner relationships, et cetera, which leads to what we're going to talk about today, which is how do we help loan officers pivot their mindset from being like hyper focused on the transaction and have them focused on doing things today that are going to build their database such that when the market makes any kind of adjustment in all of our favor, they're positioned to win. Because I'm of the mindset that the biggest database wins in this business going forward, and the biggest database that's engaged in the best, most effective way wins big. So there's a lot there. I'll let one of you guys kind of dive in and maybe add on top of that or pick a layer at it, because that's kind of the way I think about this point in time we're in right now.
I could talk forward thinking in a couple minutes, but lenders right now are focused on revenue, retention, and recruitment. And I am the firm believer passing all of them should be the R of retargeting. But we came back from the MBA annual, and from what I hear, there is going to be a lot of consolidation in this market. And that's why I think it's more important than ever. Michael's view is loan officers need to be given the keys to their own database, because there are certain things you can't control, and we can't control the market. And there might be mergers that maybe you didn't mean for them to happen today that happen tomorrow. But that loan officer relying on the lender to control their database, it's the old saying that the things we did to get us here today are going to get the same results, right? Expect the same results if you keep doing the same things. And so I think this quad box is about change. And I think the first piece that Jeff and Michael can teach a loan officer what to do, and I hope leaders know to endorse the loan officers to do this, is start to manage your own database, because it is yours and it is the key to your future.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, on that note, you talk about like what businesses want today, what banks, what, IMBs, what brokers, what everybody wants today is revenue. Obviously, everybody has heard the same stuff over and over about like playing the long game, fill your database now, etc. Like, I think that is an ancillary benefit of if you have your database management dialed in, because that's the right thing to do in your business. You bust your ass right now to fill your database, to fill the top of the funnel, because that's what it takes, because it takes a high volume of interactions. And like, that's why the partnership with Jeff and Empower makes so much sense, is because what Jeff's platform allows you to do is it allows you to get in front of agents with leverage. It allows you to get in front of 30 agents at a time, because in the best of markets, your best agent relationships are going to be good for 9 to 11 transactions a year.
Yeah.
Right. In the best of markets. In this market, those best relationships are maybe 3 to 4 transactions a year. So what's the solution? Go deeper with those? No, probably not. The solution is to be filling the top of the funnel at a massive rate. And then also, while you're doing that, have a process for managing your database, have a process for making sure that all of the work that you're putting in now can pay those extra dividends down the road. But you do it today, because that's what it takes today to be successful.
So Jeff, let's when I think about filling the top of the funnel, my mind always immediately goes to the consumer, and it's probably because where I live is really consumer focused. But what you're doing is really the top of the funnel, right? You're helping loan officers really understand how to have conversations at scale in their communities that fill that very top of the funnel that will ultimately lead to, you know, consumers coming into their own funnel. Maybe talk a little bit about what you're seeing, you know, in that realm, and how right now is the best time to have conversations, because a lot of people have a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah, well, I love what you said, just going back to that, which I wrote down, and I'm going to totally swipe that and make it a social media post, just so you
Let's
know.
do it.
But, you know, just to recap, what you said was reach, assist, engage, and nurture. And I think that is exactly what we need to be doing right now. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody in the industry who's a very well-respected top-level producer. And what she articulated was, you know, recognizing the fact that, look, it's a bit dry right now, right, when it comes to loans and things like that. And by the way, not necessarily people trying to apply, but qualifying, right?
Yeah.
And so all those issues around affordability and interest rates and all that kind of stuff. Loan officers to do, I have it here underlined, activities. Like, because we know the loans are going to come, right? It's just a matter of when. So then what do you do in the meantime? We all, you know this, but we need to be reminded, we don't sit on our hands and wait, right? The other thing I wrote down is an area of opportunity and weakness that I see for a lot of originators is audience building. Like, that to me is a new skill, especially with the advent of social media and now tools like HighLevel and marketing automation and database building and nurturing. Like, that's always, you know, lead nurturing has always been a thing, but you know what's actually comes before that is audience building. Like, where and how are you building an audience? So back to your original question, Brian, yes, realtors, top of the food chain, top of the funnel. I'm a huge fan of consumer direct, yet that's a completely different skill set and a completely different requirements when it comes to process and technology, you know, which once again, dotted line back to Michael and Empower LO, you know, where they help fill that. Now, say what you want about realtors, but even in this down market, depending on how the numbers settle in, we're still going to probably see about 4 million homes sold across the country. And that's resale, not even including build or new sale. So that's still a lot of homes. And what I usually advise loan officers to do is get with your title company, get with your MLS or whoever, and take a look in your county. How many homes sold last month in your county? I did this exercise in Orange County, California a couple of days ago, and there was roughly 13, 14, or was it 3,000? I can't remember. Actually, Clark County, Nevada, it was 1,300. So there were 1,300 homes sold in greater Las Vegas, right? And so my question that day in front of the realtors was like, how many of those do you need?
Yeah.
Like, out of 1,300, how many do you need? Same with the LOs. And so it always comes back to me, audience building, and especially what you said, this is what we need to do now is build an audience, which is reach. We need to assist them, right? Hand holding, be more of an advisor than ever before, obviously engage and nurture. Like, that's the game, so that when we do see this correction come, you're in front of that windfall.
Love it.
And that's where the system's broken. And that's where you as a loan officer need to reach out to Michael and Jeff, because when we were at Housing Wire and the top motivator, I believe, of Keller Williams, one of the top two, got up there. This is the fourth highest real estate market in history because of volume. But your operations, they look at units. Your software vendors, they look at units. The whole industry looks at units. But what do you get paid on? Volume. And so it's on you now, because the whole system's a little bit broken based on units. What Jeff and Michael help with, and what I would endorse and work with you on retargeting with, is the volume is still there to make the same living. It's just going to require less about who has the most stamina and can work till 9 o'clock at night and take applications during the abundancy period. And now who has to actually go out and provide a skill set or use behaviors, attitude, and techniques that people like Jeff can teach you, and people like Mike can make sure that every connection is not wasted. I mean, that's what Michael does. And with how much hard work it is in the 8% environment, you can't afford to waste any of that energy. But I think it's on you as a loan officer to reach out to these two, or all of us together, because it's not about units, it's about volume. That's how you get paid. And that's where the help is still there. And it's still the fourth highest market ever. And the next one's going to be the same.
Yeah. So Jeff, you kind of hit on something that I want to go a layer deeper on. And I talk a lot about this on my, LinkedIn channel. And it's this concept of shifting the mindset from a transactionally oriented loan officer to a relationship building mortgage advisor. Mm-hmm. Nuanced words, but I think they're important because to me, the mindset is around those words, right? Mm-hmm. And part of being that mortgage advisor is understanding what you're staring down in terms of the market. I mean, when we were at MBA, I recall a statistic that there's roughly 30 million first-time homebuyers who've been backed up. The system's a little bit backed up for all the reasons we've already known. This is not going to be a economic talk because we're already there. We already know what's going on there. But the result of everything that's happened is that there's a huge bubble of prospective homebuyers that have just been stopped up a little bit, right? And so the loan officer is used to those people raising their hands and saying, I'm ready, let's go. The mortgage advisor is finding ways to build their audience, as you said, Jeff, build that audience, communicate at scale, have as many conversations as possible. And that's not just these kind of conversations, it's digital conversations through social and video and using the platform that Michael described, McAllister described, to really create automation and intelligent automation. And so that to me is the next generation mortgage advisor and by the way, the next generation mortgage advisor, it's okay if you're my age, if you're 55, that's it doesn't automatically mean young. It means modern in how you're using tools to your advantage. So
Gary Vee says that.
And I don't even follow Gary Vee, but it totally makes sense. It's logical, right? So let's shift over to Empower LO a little bit and kind of talk about some of that scalable interaction and communication that you can help with through automation and through your platform, Michael.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting how it's evolved, right? Because in a market with an abundance of conversations taking place, like the goal was just to get in front of as many of those people as possible, as efficiently as possible, right? Whereas now, although we still have that goal of filling the top of the funnel, there's the elephant in the room, right? There's way less transactions taking place and not enough less loan officers chasing them to offset the effect of that to the individual loan officer. So they need, what a loan officer needs to do, not only have these massive massive efforts at the top of the funnel, but they also need to leverage technology as a way to create meaningful interactions in the middle of the funnel, right? And so not using automation as in, hey, I'm going to send a canned text message to 200 people, or I'm going to, remember slide dial, slide broadcast and stuff like, no, it's not like that anymore. Like you have to use more nuanced automation that's going to put the people in front of you when they need to be in front of you so that you can do, even if it's like for me, for example, a video, sending a video, or, Jeff and I communicate all the time via voice notes back and forth, right? But but that's because Jeff and I know each other and have a face-to-face relationship. If it was somebody that I hadn't met or somebody I didn't have a relationship, that video would be way more powerful, would be way more impactful for that, right? That's using technology. You can use automation to identify who should have who should be in that category. You can utilize a platform like FinLocker and monitor the interactions that your borrowers are having with the app in order to determine who has a high level of intent. But then as soon as you get to that point, that's when the manual interaction needs to take place. And maybe it's not a phone call. You can shave time by recording a video and sending it over, but it's using technology to create more meaningful interactions. with the massive effort that you put at the top of the funnel, you're going to have to be smart about those efforts in the middle of the funnel in order to maintain those relationships. And so that's how we view you should be doing that.
So Jeff, as it relates to educating the real estate professional in those local communities, I'm curious kind of on some of the strategies that are most fruitful there. Now, one thing that comes to mind right away is this exact conversation we're having is taking that to 30 real estate professionals and being able to kind of share this type of strategy. But I'm also curious if you found it or you see it effective to help those real estate professionals understand how to serve, those early journey first-time home buyers who aren't yet ready to engage with a mortgage professional, right? Maybe they're 6, 10, 12 months away. Is there a strategy for helping arm realtors with some financial education content so that they can become part of that trusted resource in the community?
Yeah, I think now than ever, it's more important to really align and partner together between real estate agent and mortgage professional, because we need each other more than ever, right? I mean, back in 2020, right? What was the biggest problem? It was capacity, and it was just like, how fast can you get it done? So there was no need for education or building out this long-term kind of drip nurture thing. It was just about, man, let's just get it through the system, right? And that's obviously drastically changed. So with a longer sales cycle, then we need to be able to stay engaged and top of mind in the primary choice for those contacts, right? And of course, there's multiple channels to do that. I think equally, we're all here a big believer in getting people on your email list, right? And that doesn't mean, by the way, we abuse them. It means we are communicating with them with relevant, valuable content and all the stuff we all have heard and known for years of checking in, et cetera, through various different steps throughout the process. But to that point of, really aligning with real estate agents, one of the things that I espouse is that, two things real quick is, if you could picture a pyramid, right? And part of the challenge with originators is their approach. Like if they want more success with real estate agents, especially now, too many people approach from the bottom of the pyramid, which is solicitor, right? Yeah. And then some cold calling, and then they move up to the vendor stage, which is now, oh great, I'm a vendor and I lead with products and pricing, right? And so that gets all tuned out for the reasons we know. And what we do to collectively, Michael and I as a team, is say, hey, let's enter the conversation as a partner, right? And then ultimately become a peer. Full circle back to, how do you do that? You help them solve problems. And one of the problems they have is, how do I build that long-term engagement strategy with these people? Because we know they're sitting on the fence, they're watching, they're waiting, that's what everybody's, buyers are just watching, sellers are waiting. So what do you do in the meantime, right? You better have something good, right, to engage with them. There's a variety of strategies around that. But that's really, I think, the direction I know that we're heading collectively is like, we've got to come together as one unified solution for these folks that are waiting. And who knows when that's going to come. But if we don't, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And there's so many options, right? There's, it's not like, 20 years ago. There are options, and, we've already hit on this. There's still probably too many. There's definitely more loan officers than there's a need for it, given today's kind of volume and capacity. So it's, how do you stand out for that consumer so that when they're ready, you've earned the right to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest challenge is really, how long do you have to be in that nurturing cycle?
As long as it takes.
Yeah. And it's going to be longer than you're used to, right? In terms of, sure. It's just the nature of where we are in this business today.
Yep. Mr. Kelleher, did you have something, or?
I'll just say, when you go on these, usually, right, you'll hear people come from a certain perspective. I've been on a million of them, so I have this antenna. I can't stress enough, these two have an actionable plan that I know will work in this environment. It's creating a platform built around a community, whether it's a community in your local zip code or community in that realtor's sphere of influence. But at the end of the day, realtors get 25 leads through sign riders and through these classes and everywhere, only to typically give you 2 of them to pre-qual to close 1. So what happens with those other 23? Well, Michael has the best solution on the market. And yes, you could start with that, but how are you going to get that relationship with them? Well, you're going to do that through becoming this peer, becoming this team. And you do that through Jeff's program where you're getting them in groups. And you know how we know it's working? Somebody from one Remax will say, can you do that class to this one? Can you come in for our East Coast Realtors Association brunch? Somebody just dropped out and we really need somebody to give that speech. The classes it is giving are making such an impactful memory for them. They're actually inviting them in. And when they get invited in, that's when you can have different conversations of what are you doing with those 23 leads? So if 10 people show up, what are you doing with those 230 leads? If 100 people show up, what are you doing with those 2,300 leads? That same system that they were a part of that was able to invite them to multiple classes and help them give the same classes, they'll start to realize that's where my 2,300 leads are going to go. And eventually you're not going to close them. You got to think of it. You guys are going to close them together. And there I go talking about units again, but you're going to close volume because volume matters. And that is what's important. So I am just saying this isn't a advice quad box. This is a quad box with the number one actionable step that you can do tomorrow. And Jeff can tell you, it's not for everybody. But if you think you can get in front of 10 people at a local Marriott, let Adopt the Brand come in for nothing. I will help coach you along in that program for those 10 people at that Marriott, because you have to start somewhere. We always said with the app, the best times to plant a tree are 20 years ago, and the next best time is today.
Yeah, right now.
Michael, I think you hit on something that I don't talk nearly enough about, but I love to talk. I love to talk about it, which is the impact that like just learning this stuff, just learning and soaking in the digital marketing and database management and marketing automation and like just the impact that that's had on my life and my career, right? I started as a loan officer doing that. And I was early enough to the game that I was able to transition to starting Empower LO. And now we help loan officers en masse with that. Awesome. But like, it's still early. It's still early enough that as a loan officer, if you invest, or as a branch manager, or like you invest in learning this, it will pay dividends for your entire career, and it feeds on itself, right? You start obsessing over this digital marketing stuff and you realize, oh crap, the best way for me to get in front of agents is at scale through either an in-person class or a webinar. Okay, now I know how to remarket to those. Like Michael said, now those agents are looking at me like, wow, he really knows his shit. Why? Because I'm a part of his funnel. I'm getting marketed too, right? And you basically create a level of expertise and an ecosystem around that expertise where you no longer are looked at it as a mortgage person, period. You can choose your opportunity to monetize it. If you're going to do it through loan production, do it through loan production. But at the end of the day, you're the marketing expert, you're the sales expert. And that is why people look at you and why your agents will refer you their business, even when times are tough.
I'll give you an example. Think of how tough it is to start posting on Instagram and get followers, especially people you know, and go from not being embarrassed about it to like, this is what I want for a career, right? Or you could use Michael and Jeff's system and actually understand that for $1 a day, you can retarget 1,000 people, and you could actually retarget that local Popwana list where every time they pull up a YouTube video every couple of days, this class is showing up for a lot less expensive, a lot less hard work, and a lot less lighting and microphones. They will think in that community how powerful you are. And when you tell the realtor that you're actually only doing that through retargeting, and those 23 leads that you do, I can coach you on how to do that. First of all, you wouldn't have met them without the system they built with Jeff, but it all makes sense and it all goes around. And then just a plug, when you have something like FinLocker, where then you can provide the stickiness, because those 23 leads still are going to take about 340 to 360 days to close, whether it's ethos, community, or LinkedIn, Facebook ads at the higher end. But I learned that through Jeff's podcast. Those are longer. And now you have tools, you have connection, and you have expertise, or you're an authority in that area, like Michael said. So I'm just so bullish on these two. It's incredible.
Hey, Jeff, I want to ask you about some of the content in, in the classes, right? In the value that's being delivered to the agents. Are you coaching your mortgage advisors on helping their local agents kind of understand the power of personal branding? Is that all part of the strategy? I think that's a super interesting one to kind of poke at there.
Yeah, if you think about it, many of the challenges we face as mortgage originators also are faced by real estate agents, right? Because we're in a sales and marketing business. And if you are listening to this, and do you ask yourself, do you struggle with identifying your personal brand? Do you struggle with creating video content? Do you struggle with knowing what to post? Do you struggle with your Google business profile, et cetera, et cetera? If you do, so do they. And quite honestly, most of them don't have a consistent, reliable source for that information. Now, some do better than others, EXP and Keller Williams of the world, et cetera, who have some of that in their ecosystem, but by and large, many don't. Or it's so fractional, like for them to go find and collect and put all the information together relevant to them. Like, that's why it's funny, people ask you how to do something, and oh, well, how do I, change a tire? I'm like, YouTube, like, right. But some people won't even think to get on YouTube. And this is the same that I find is, shockingly, I'll be in a class with real estate agents and they'll ask me a question of well, how do you do an Instagram story? And I'll be like, have you heard of this thing? It's called YouTube. It's like really brand new. And so anyway, the point, getting back to your question, is okay, so what do we help them with? We help them with, the latest class we just released last week was called Master the Market. It's how to close 2023 strong and dominate 2024. So what are we showing them there? All the activities they need to do that, we're talking about here, which is the long wait, right? What do we do during the long wait? How do we show up online? What do I say? All those different things. Do I have my systems and processes in place? Personal branding, Google business profile. I named a bunch of them. ChatGPT, right? So definitely we're helping them, I like to say, solve problems. Because another quote I have written down here, which is, if you want to earn their business, you need to become part of their business. And products and pricing, right, isn't really part of their business. Right. Helping them solve problems is going to reduce the resistance, increase the trust, and facilitate that relationship that's going to get those referrals.
Love that. Love that. Any you guys, the Michaels, anything to add on that comment?
I have something to add, if you don't mind. On today's talking points, I don't know if we really made a point of this, but one of your questions is what does the next generation mortgage advisor look like?
Yeah.
And I have one word for that: adaptable. That's it. Yeah. How fast can you adapt? And this is one of our classes, by the way. But when I talk about adaptability, what does that really mean? It means the ability to learn new skills and apply.
Learn and apply.
Right. Learn, number one. Number two, apply, and do it without bitching and moaning along the way. Right. But that's really, to me, kind of the headline of what does a next gen originator look like, is you darn well better be able to adapt on the fly and learn how to build an audience, learn how to nurture people over the long term, be less transactional, et cetera.
Yeah, I love it. It totally makes sense. And look, we've come off this cycle where, in the mortgage side, loans were falling out of trees. You'd wake up out of bed and you had 7 new ones in the pipeline overnight. Those days are gone. Dare I say they don't return, at least the way they look like in most recent history. I think it's all going to be different, and it's what you're doing. I firmly believe it's the things you're going to do, today, October 20th through December 31st, that are going to pave the way for what January looks like. And if you're resisting at every turn and you're not adaptable, then expect January to be as cold as you are saying it's going to be. But there's a ton of people out there that we engage with, all of us talk to, who they're actually built for this market, right? They're willing to do the hard work that others won't, and that's really what it comes down to is getting after it and rolling up your sleeves and doing that hard work. I have another question that we had kind of put on our talking points list, and then there's a question from the audience that I'll get to in a second. But I'm curious, Jeff, from your seat, and then Michael McAllister from your seat, in terms of managing, at scale, is what is the role of AI and Chat GPT and, kind of some of those more modern techniques? What is that role, and how does it look like today for not just the mortgage originator, but for the real estate professional?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. You want to burn the rest of our time on that? I think the answer, let's circle back in a year, and the answer will probably be somewhat changed too. Yeah. Because this is, as you know, an ever evolving thing. But my short answer to that is the role is, the way I see it, at least currently, is efficiency. Being able to use a tool like ChatGPT or others to be more efficient in your output of things you need to do anyways. In the real estate agent example, a listing presentation outline, writing social media content, email newsletter outreach, a buyer preparing to move letter or email. I'll give you one other real quick. This is we're launching another class at the end of every year. We usually do business planning for real estate agents, and so I've been feverishly working on finishing that class. And one of the things we always talk about in that class is start with your why, Simon Sinek, right? So in the presentation, what I decided to do was use ChatGPT and ask it, are you familiar with the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek? And it said yes. And so then what I did was I crafted a series of prompts to help the agent, air quotes, right, get clear on how to articulate and understand and get clear on their why. Because too many people start with what I do. I'm a real estate agent, right? With who cares? And it's all about the why. So it was really interesting to see GPT come back with that response. And that's an example of efficiency, because while that might not be the end why that you settle on, it saved me a hell of a lot of time thinking with a cup of friggin' espresso or whatever, right? Just be like, what's my why,
I love that. Just to piggyback on that a moment, you hear about a lot of people talking about, so we've got this, I think they're still on strike, the Screen Actors Guild, right? And one of the points of the strike is around, the impact of AI replacing actors, right?
Writers, you mean?
Well, the writers, I think, cleared the strike. They're talking about literally, building avatars to replace the actors at some point. But somebody talked about this at one of the sessions at a recent conference I was at, and they said AI is not going to replace your job. Mm-hmm. Somebody using AI is going to replace your job. Mm-hmm. And so you either embrace the modern tools and technology, or it will be a threat. And I think that goes across every business, every industry, and it's really applicable today, in the real estate finance space. So the way I use ChatGPT is I have this podcast, and one of the tasks I have following recording is to kind of cut it up into some clips so that we can promote it and get it out there. And so I'll take the transcript from each of those clips and just ask ChatGPT, please write and I always say please, by the way, please write a 2 to 3 sentence, post promoting Jeff, Michael, and Michael and our conversation around XYZ. And then I clip the transcript, pop it in there, and done. And then, I'll edit it a little bit so it sounds like me on the other side. But you talk about getting to the end of a finished product faster and more efficient. That's one way to, an idea to leverage the tool to your favor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michael, you're on your side. Where do you see AI playing a role as far as it being more efficient on the platform side?
Yeah, I mean, first off, the first thing I thought of is exactly where Jeff went with it initially, which is back to what he said about adaptability. Is like, to define it other than the way that I'm going to try to is difficult because it's going to change and adapt so quickly, right? But I think there's a software development tool that I think the name of that tool is the perfect description for what I feel like the role of anybody who's running their own business or their own marketing at any level, like how they should look at ChatGPT or AI, which is Copilot. In software development, there's a AI ChatGPT driven tool called Copilot that helps you run, like, debug, interpret code, write code, even comment on code to, basically like narrate what you're doing in the code. Really, really cool tool. And it just sits along your terminal with you while you're coding, right? And it's always there. And when I use ChatGPT, it sounds like very similarly to how you guys are using it, right? When I use it, I find that it, like, the more I use it, the better I am at using it, right? If I have that tab open all the time and I'm just thinking of ChatGPT as my co-pilot in anything that I'm doing, and I'm always thinking of a way to, like, tap into it and leverage it, I'm not going to say that leads to the best and most effective use of ChatGPT, but what I can say is I'm going to stay ahead of the curve, and then I'm not going to get replaced by that shit. I can promise you that, right? Because I'm going to be there every step of the way.
Got it. Love it. So there's a question that came in, a little bit of a loaded question, but we'll do our best here, because I think this, I don't know that there's 5 things, but what are the top 5 things an MLO, mortgage loan officer, can do or does to add value to a real estate agent? Who wants to take that one first? I think we can riff on this a little bit.
Well, number one, what's number one, Jeff?
Help them solve problems.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. And solve problems is bottom line. I think everything else is going to fall into that category, right? But educate is the first thing that I was going to think of but yeah, solving problems is bottom line. List out 5 realtors' problems, and then you'll have your 5 solutions right there, right? And so education can actually fall into 5 different categories if you know enough about their problems to educate them on 5 different things. But whether it's leads, whether it's pipeline management, whether it's retargeting, in hot markets, you got loan officers. In not insanely hot markets, but in, like, warm markets, you have loan officers that'll go door knocking with real estate agents, right? Like, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's exactly what Jeff said. Bottom line, like, solve problems, list out their problems, and go one by one, and you'll have as many ways to add value as you do problems.
And if you want to get granular, the 3 Michael said would if it was Family Feud, it'd be like bing, bing, like they would all have made the top 5. The other one I'll say is show up in whatever it is that they need you for. Show up, because there's so many people that aren't willing to do it. And, like, when I go back to Rotary, and I haven't been, but when I go in a couple of years later, I'm still the youngest one there. Like, everybody below me has a different opinion of showing up. And in local community, if the realtor's showing up, then you should show up.
I think the question was, what are 5 things that an LO could do, right? Was it, what was the second part?
Or top 5 things,
to do what with a real estate agent?
Well, it was very generic, to add value.
Okay. Yeah. Generic. Yeah. But I get what the question is. And I would say it this way as well, is bottom line is only, let's piggyback on what was already said. You only need to do one thing, and find out what are they trying to achieve, what are their goals between Q4 and then for 2024. By the way, if they don't have any, that's a red flag. And then yeah, exactly. So when you ask them, if they're like, well, okay, heads up. But here's one question you can ask them when they tell you, oh, well, okay, so here's what I'd like to do for the rest of this year. Like, you could ask them, what projects are you working on that's really got you excited? What are your goals? What areas of your business need the most attention right now? And then when they give you the answer, great. What do you see as the potential roadblocks? Because the roadblocks are your opportunity to add value.
Right.
If I could, I'll share real quickly a story of a buddy of mine, Wally Ellerberry, out of Texas. Wally's a superstar originator, $200 million producer. And I remember when I interviewed him on the podcast, what he said was, early in his career, he decided he would become the best realtor he possibly could without ever selling a home. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I went to the Tom Ferry coaching. I got one thing certified. I went to Keller Williams Bold. I got educated like a real estate agent would, so that when I did ask those realtors, what's your obstacle? He had the solution right there, ready to go. Right.
Amazing. Yeah, so there's a reason why he's Wally, right? And that's one of those reasons. So before we yesterday, I kind of wrote down notes and then I typed them up. We've hit all the points that I wanted to cover, but there's one thing that I wrote down yesterday, and I purposely left it out of our email. And I wrote down, have more conversations. And I think we've talked around that throughout this, 50 minutes now. And I think at the end of the day, if we're talking about getting the way I think about this conversation, it's how do I get hyper local, but then scale myself in a hyper local manner. And to me, it comes back to having more conversations. And it might not be having a one-on-one conversation all the time. It might be a 1 to 30, a 1 to 10, a 1 to 50, right? And so for me, and that's kind of a lesson that I've been trying to teach myself, is to have as many conversations as possible on what's important to the folks that I'm trying to help solve problems for, right? And so I think we've covered, like, I've learned a ton from you guys. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your expertise and your wisdom. I love how Jeff and Michael, your platforms complement each other. And my narrow thinking says Jeff is the hyper local, get in there, get those conversations going, and Michael helps scale that in a massive way and have routines that are happening behind it that help pull those conversations into transactions down the road. We have a few minutes left. I'll let you guys, we could do this is where we make our picks, I guess, for Sunday football, but we'll skip that and just let you guys give kind of one last comment for the audience before we go. Let's start with Mr. Kelleher.
My last comment would be, I've always seen myself as a futurist. That wasn't my branding, but we created the pizza tracker in mortgage with receipts before Domino's came out with it. And Domino's looked very similar. And then everybody after that was like, we were saying the pizza tracker. Well, we came up with the pizza tracker before it was even a pizza tracker. But I look at this as the world outside, text messaging, screen timing, everything was so much more advanced than the mortgage industry. And then COVID happened. And mortgage originators have had to deal with the abundancy and those behaviors. Even vendors have built or were building for 2 years, especially think CRMs, right? Around how do you get business in an abundancy model? How do you grow, engage, nurture your database in an abundancy model, not an 8%? I think they fell even further behind because the rest of the world did not have that huge growth. And if anything, they took a step back, but have taken a step forward now. And I think the mortgage industry is going to be a lot like that gentleman, the old man in Shawshank Redemption, that gets let out, and he just doesn't like this new world. He almost gets run over because there weren't cars like that before. Everything's so much faster, and he just wants it to go back. And so I think lenders need to, and I'm being conscious of time here.
I never thought we'd get Shawshank into this podcast, so thank you for that. I do.
Is that our usual suspects?
Worthy plug.
November is going to be one of the worst months ever because listing data shows there's only going to be 270,000 new listings. We can only control the market that's in front of us. December is a bunch of traditionally coffee cakes, setting your goals, and holiday parties. I think starting tomorrow or finish out October strong, but if you don't wake up November 1st and have an actionable strategy started for January 1st, that means take care of all your goals and take care of building out your, I call it the CTR plan. But if there's clicks, how are you targeting those? If there's calls, make sure you're following up with text. And if there's collaboration, like Jeff's program, make sure that you have a plan to teach. But build that. Get familiar with this collaboration of those two ahead of time. So you're ready January 1st on your exact plan. And I can't be more bullish on retargeting. Reach out to me. But if you're not have a full retargeting plan starting January 1st to retarget all those CTs, build an R underneath, you're going to end up, everybody's chasing too many strategies, too many AI. Forget AI. Who are you going to target? If you're a loan officer that's willing to get out into an office, call these two. And if you're running a mortgage company, just find the 4 people in your company that are courageous enough to get in front of realtors and start with this program so that January 1st, everybody has their goals. Everybody always goes out. Remember with the app, they're the most productive those first 2 weeks, regardless of where the rates are. You are giving them such a head start that once they start, they can't stop.
Love it. Michael.
This is the time to get all of your database in one spot. And this is the last time that you're going to be able to ignore this advice without repercussion in my eyes, right? Like we've been hearing this for a long time. There's been a lot of conflict in that message, and the fact that the companies that are telling us to do better at managing our database are also telling us that that database is theirs if we leave them. We're seeing some of that shift. We're seeing some of that stop, which is great for the industry. It's great for producers. It is time to get your database all in one spot and create a plan around communicating with and staying in touch with them. And then heed the oxymoron that is use technology and AI to create more meaningful, impactful connections face to face.
Love that. I love that. Jeff, bring us home.
Yeah, if I could, to piggyback on the wonderful reference to Shawshank Redemption, which is always on my list. People ask, what's your favorite movie?
Never pass it by.
Right, exactly. So to me, I had to I was given the luxury of looking this up for a second, but to me, one of the best lines of that movie, and I think this will put a cherry on top of this whole thing, is like, get busy living or get busy dying.
Oh man, there you go. That's the that's our title for this podcast when I republish it. I love that.
There you go. Do all the things you heard today, people. That's it.
That's it. Guys, thank you so much. This was a blast. This won't be the last time we do this. I learned a ton from you guys. I'm sure the audience that was with us live did as well. Next time we do this, we're going to hopefully be at a little bit brighter time in terms of the industry, but I would just leave the audience with the recommendation that just get out there and have as many meaningful conversations as you can. The transactions aren't going to be in your way for the next few months. So just get out there and take the lessons learned from this conversation and start putting them into action. Thanks everybody for tuning in to our FinTech Fridays live, and tune back in next Friday to our next episode of the podcast. Thanks y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.